Hi, Alan Cox here. Most organizations have three major challenges. Number one, where does their sensitive data live? Number two, who has access to this sensitive data? And number three, how do we prioritize our risks? Which risks should we focus on first? DSPM, or Data Security Posture Management, inside of Microsoft Purview, answers these questions, all in a very simple, unified interface and solution inside of Microsoft Purview. So today we're going to dive into that just a little bit, look at a few use cases and some examples on how we can leverage DSPM inside of Microsoft Purview to deploy some policies. So that's going to be our focus today. DSPM inside of Microsoft Purview. Let's get started. All right, here we are in Microsoft Purview. So we are at purview.microsoft.com, and I'm going to go down here to DSPM. So we've got DSPM for AI. That's classic now, and data security posture management, and also in classic. And so what they've done is basically these two solutions are now kind of rolled into this unified DSPM. If we click DSPM, well, actually, let's do this. Let's go here, and we'll go to DSPM for AI, and we'll see that is going to completely retire on the 30th of September of this year. But all DSPM for AI Classic features and your data are available now in the DSPM. So that's where we'll go here. So, what sensitive data do we have? Where is it? Who has access to it? And should we be worried about that? Well, that's the problem that we're going to solve using DSPM, or Data Security Posture Management. So Microsoft describes DSPM as basically a centralized view of data security posture that helps discover sensitive data, identify risks, and prioritize some remediation. So when we look at DSPM here, we are, we see we've got the posture, we've got some objectives, we can look at some AI observability, we'll take a look at that. Some discover stuff here, we'll take a quick look at that. And then, of course, we're going to focus largely on some of the action stuff. We'll look at some of the reporting stuff. And so high level, but we'll try to get into some specifics here and some use cases. There's a lot here. So really, the DSPM inside of Microsoft Purview really kind of shows you a little bit of everything that's going on in your environment. So most organizations really have three challenges. Okay, they don't know where their sensitive data lives. They don't know who's accessing it, or they don't know which risks to fix first. And so Microsoft Purview DSPM helps answer those questions really in a single experience. So as we talk about that, so let's start here with data security posture management. We'll go to posture, which is kind of a high level overview here. We have some key posture metrics, which are classified and label assets. 2% of my environment is got a labeling. We can click into that, drill that, and we can see some of the trends and stats around classified and labeled assets. Okay, data protection activities covered by data loss prevention. We can click here, and we're pretty much flatlined there. We'll take a look at DLP here in a little bit. We don't have any data protection triaging those alerts either. And so and then we've got top objectives to protect sensitive data. One is to prevent exposure in Microsoft 365 Copilot and Copilot interactions. We're going to take a look at that in just a little bit, but so we'll dive into that. We click into these remediation plans. It kind of says Copilot interactions. So here's the default protections in place. Copilot interactions are scanned for sensitive data. Copilot honors sensitivity labels. And compliance with AI regulations are assessed, and specific SharePoint sites can be restricted from use in Copilot. You get that through SharePoint SAM or SharePoint Advanced Management. And then there's additional things that we can do here with complete the following action to prevent data exposure. We're going to do that here in just a little bit. Then we can go prevent oversharing of sensitive data. We can look at the remediation plan here. And so we can look here, protect your data from potential oversharing risk in 365. We can go in and view the default assessment results. We can look at details. And on down here, we can drill into this. Protect sensitive data referenced in 365 Copilot via labels. We'll look at that in a little bit as well. And so we can look at some trend. We have oversharing items, 100% in the last 30 days. And then we've got some stale data. So we've got 503 items that are over a year old. So we can take a look at those if we want. We view activities, any of that exfiltrated or, any of that labeled or not labeled exfiltrated. Fresh data, less than a year old, same thing. We can look at labeled data versus non-labeled data. And then just some posture trends overall we can take a look at. So quite a bit here. Okay. And so, of course, then we can get into, if we have Copilot, Security Copilot, we can go in and ask it some questions here. And so it gives you some prompts here that we can ask Copilot here. Let's go down to objectives now. Objective again, we can look at some of these are some primary objectives you might consider in your environment. So to prevent data exposure in Copilot 365 and Copilot interactions, we'll take a look at this in a minute. But we can go do some prompts here. Gives us some suggested prompts. So show external domain activities. List out the occurrence of suspicious web browsing, such as access malware and phishware sites. Phishing sites in the last or in the recent 30 days. And of course, we can click that prompt and it would go, except I do not have Security Copilot set up or enabled at the moment. I don't have the capacity set up for it. So it does use some consumption billing. And so for that reason, I do not have it turned on. But so we can do that. We can prevent oversharing of sensitive data. We can look at the remediation plan. We can hit. And we get some stats related to each of those. Prevent exfiltration of risk to risky destinations. So, USB drive, non-Microsoft Cloud, whatever it is. Discover unmonitored data and so forth. And so there's just a lot here. Discover sensitive data in your organization. We can view remediation plan, and here initiate on-demand classification estimate. So we can view policy details, and we can do just a lot of really cool things here. I recommend just spending some time and going through and getting really familiar with this dashboard. AI observability, won't spend too much time here, but basically we can go in here and see what's happening with AI inside of our environment, what agents are in play, how much your risk levels and so forth. We can drill into those agents and get additional information, any policies related to them, any recommendations that we can look based on that particular agent or the agent registry. And you can look at that registry, by the way, inside of Copilot, or rather the admin center in the Agent 365. And so we're going to look at all apps and agents here, and here's where we can look and see, there's 8 AI apps, 44 agents going on in my environment. And as this refreshes down here, maybe we're going to refresh that again and see if we get anything going on here. Refresh the page. See if we get anything down here. If not, we'll move on. There we go. So we got again. Yeah, we're gonna go look at all apps and agents, and there we go. So we can look at some of these apps and agents. The 365 Copilot app. Different agents that I have built or that I have built in here. And so we can go in and get some stats around those and usefulness of those. We can discover apps and agents. These are apps and agents kind of that are being used in the environment. And so we can kind of look at that. And so we'll look at some, facilitator agent, for example. I can go in and see um, just some information about that agent used, um, how it's used, and just the stats around that particular agent. So just some information. There's just a monitored app agent here. And close that here. All right, then we have the Activity Explorer. So this is where we can review related activity content that contains sensitive information or has labels applied, such as what labels were changed, files that were modified, or more, right? So label activity is monitored across Exchange, SharePoint, OneDrive, et cetera, and in endpoint devices as well. So we can drop this Mac here, this log here. It goes back to 30 days, but we'll just take it to the end of June to now, and we'll just see kind of what happens here. So activity, we can say file upload or email sent to external recipient, right? Email sent to free public domains. I don't know if you remember the insider insider risk. Some of the setup there, we talked about some of the free public domains. So we can just look at some of these patterns, these emails, as well as risk patterns. Um, you know, departing users, transferring files with sensitive information, etc. So we can go into the risk patterns kind of related to that insider risk. So that's a little bit of Activity Explorer. So Asset Explorer really just contains sensitive information, um, such as the files, labels, data sets, etc. So, but we can drill into the sensitivity label as far as the asset name and the workload. So if we click into one of these, for example, let's see if it pulls up for us here. Much information. There we go. So this was an asset inside of a notebook, a OneNote notebook, or actually a Copilot notebook that was integrated with Notebook that we did a little while back. So it just goes into kind of the internal user permission account, for example, and just some information about that. And anything that's containing sensitive information is all about sensitive information. It's not reporting everything that's going on in your environment, but this review set contains sensitive information or labels. Data risk assessments. Let's see if we've got some of this stuff going on here. We do have one custom assessments. We talked about assessments out in the out what am I trying to say? The Purview Compliance Manager. We've got some assessments there, and so this is some of the default assessment. We can view details of this, and it'll take us over to this default assessment, and we can see kind of just some information about total items, kind of where they're at, what they might contain, right? So this is where we can go in and just get an idea of what SharePoint site, what locations have sensitive information, and what type they have. Okay, so that's a little bit of that. Now we're going to get into tasks and setup. So the setup task, won't go into this too much, but these are just some things you just need to kind of set up ahead of time. So we activate the auditing. We have to have that. We extend the insights for data discovery. We click into this. It shows us, it really goes us right into exactly how to set this up. based policies that are created from here. Pretty straightforward and simple. Um, and the installer browser extension, I don't have that. I think I've just basically said it's completed. So, and we onboard a device to Microsoft Purview if you want the full value of endpoint here, endpoint reporting inside DSPM, then do that. So just a few things you need to do, protect data sensitivity levels, etc. So just kind of get started with some of the thing. Not very much is, in fact, only the auditing is required. Everything else is just recommended to get the biggest bang for your buck. Now, here's where it really comes down to it. Before we do that, let's do some reports and just take a look at this reporting. I'm not going to get into a whole lot of this, but there is a lot here. AI usage and the risk, policies with AI workloads, 365 Copilot. If we were to click into this, we can just get um, all the amount of items scanned with sensitive information type. We can go in and view this default assessment. We kind of looked at that as the default assessment before. Sensitivity labels on data. We can drill into this, right? Just a ton of information here in this reporting that we can get. And so as we go back to these reports, just a lot here. So label distribution and adoption, data security, risk insights, so AI usage and risk. So we can go here and see, um, you know, total interactions over time, and of course we can drill this here. This is the last 30 days. We can view details on this. There's not much else. Yeah, there's a few things down here. So we can view the details of this and continue to just drill into our data. Again, DSPM is about what sensitive information you have in your environment, where it is, who has access to it, and then also does Copilot have access to it, and agents have access to it. And so, and then we can get into controls there. So it takes us to this the remediation actions. So there's a bunch of stuff here that's recommended. And then there are some things here. We'll refresh this. Sometimes this doesn't load on me here for the first time. We'll refresh this for a second. All right, so we've got all these recommendations, and then we've got these things that are completed. So I'm going to take a look here, and I'm going to call out a couple different things. There's a ton here. So we can fortify our data security. We can guided assistance for AI regulations. But I want to look. I want to look at a couple different things here. Um, I want to um, let's safeguard sensitive data in Copilot in Microsoft 365 Copilot interactions. So what does that mean? What that means is we can configure and enforce a data loss prevention policy that prevents sensitive information from being exposed in Copilot processing. Which now it's part of the interaction. It doesn't mean that it means that if I'm typing something that has sensitive information in it, it will not allow the interaction, the response from Copilot. Not a file, not that. We'll deal with that in a minute. But I'm talking about if somebody starts typing sensitive information into Copilot, it will block it. Let's take a look at this. Let's get started here. We're going to take a look at this. We're going to create a DLP rule that will match some things, and so it's going to go here now. So what it is we want select the sensitive information you want to protect in your DLP policy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to protect. I'm going to say I want to protect. Let's protect a Social Security number, and I'm going to say U.S. Social Security number. Okay, and then I'm going to add that. And now I want to say, and by the way, I can add more thing, and I can say any of these. If I were to add something else, so I can say, I don't know. Let's say credit card number, right? So I can say any or any of these. Okay. So there's 2 items, and it could be any one of those, so sensitive information type, okay? So we can just keep adding those, or you can have different policies for different things. And so, and that's fine. So any of these, that is fine. Now, the action, yep, here is the action, restrict user prompts from being processed, okay? Or I can say restrict web searches, okay? And if we call this out here, we can see that this allows prompts to run in the enterprise search, but blocks from being sent to the web. So you have the work web, although they've changed the design of Copilot, but you get the idea. In this case, I'm going to say I want to restrict it from being in processed at all, right, through Copilot. This isn't I upload a file to it or email a file, that kind of DLP policy, right? This just, I don't want social security numbers or credit cards to be in prompting, in asking about them. So I'm going to test this in a minute. It could take a minute for it to actually get going and fire up, but it's creating those policies. Now, if we want to, so see if it created the policy. We're going to go to policy details. Okay. Okay, it's in testing. We're going to go and edit in the solution. And when you edit in the solution, it's going to take us right to that DLP policy. Okay. So that is where it is going to take us into that DLP policy. Here we go. Loading it up. There it is. Now we can give this as a name. Okay, so but for now we're going to leave it. That's fine, and give it a meaningful description. That's fine. We're not going to do admin units here. And so we're going to go down here and we're just saying Copilot chat. Okay. And I can edit the users and groups, etc. So we're going to go here. And then I'm going to say, here's the rule. So if we look at this rule, content contains any of these sensitive information, credit card numbers, social security numbers, okay? Send alerts to administrator, and I'm going to edit this. But I can say, send, so the action is we can send alerts to me. Okay, and then of course we can do all kinds of other things, but we're restricting the prompt, okay, from Copilot. So I am going to go next here, run the policy in simulation mode. I want to turn this on. I do recommend doing it in simulation mode, but we're going to turn this on right now and see if we can get this thing to go. Submit. And it is submitting. Now, once you submit this, it does take a little while for this policy to, we're going to go done here. We're going to see that it is syncing. Now, what does this mean when it says syncing? It means that it is sending this policy out to the workloads so that they are aware that there's a DLP policy in play here. Now, while that's doing that, because this can take some time and I'm going to have to pause the video and come back to it, I'm going to go ahead and create another policy that's similar. In this one, maybe I want, and I'm going to do this from DSPM, same thing. We're going to see this here. I'm going to go, we're going to click out of that. Back to this remediation, we're going to create one more here. And this is something I do often when I demo DSPM. And that is that we want to protect sensitive data. I don't want to do that. I want to do protect items from Copilot and agent processing. And I think this is the one I want to do. So I'm going to do, and we can do prevent oversharing of sensitive data. There's a lot we can do. So I'm going to protect items. Nope. I'm going to protect protect sensitive data referenced in Copilot and agent responsive. By the way, that one that we did, safeguard data and Copilot interactions, that is this one right here. It's considered completed, and the policy is now enforced. Of course, it's syncing. So, but I'm going to do is I'm going to protect items from 365 Copilot and Copilot processing. Let's see what we can do here. So what we're going to do is we're going to go here and I'm going to get started. And what this do is sensitivity labels. Keep your data, okay, restricted from Copilot. So here's what's going to happen. I've created a label, and by the way, I already have this label. We're going to do it this way. We're going to go to Purview, and I'm going to show you just label that I have created. And by the way, this label doesn't mean the label itself doesn't really mean a whole lot. We're going to go to information protection. In other words, the label is just a tag in this case. There's no permissions on this label. We're going to go sensitivity labels. And we're going to see I created a label down here called Copilot block. Now, there's nothing special about this label. If I were to go in and edit this label, you'll see there's nothing on this label. It's just a label. We're going to go here. We're going to see that it's being applied or can be applied to files and other data sets and users and sites or groups and sites. We're going to go, we see no control here. We see no, there's no auto labeling policy. There's no policy here. Yeah, it's just there's nothing to this label. It's literally just a tag because we're going to use DSPM, which will launch a DLP policy that says where that label shows up, Copilot can't touch it, okay? And so what we're going to do now is we're going to do that policy, which is protect items from Copilot and agent processing, and we are going to get started. We're going to restrict restrict Copilot from accessing external emails, restrict Copilot from accessing knowledge sources with sensitivity labels, and the label is going to be Copilot block. By the way, they've added a lot of this stuff into right here. You used to have to go create the policy or go out to the policy, create it all out there, but now they've made it a whole lot easier, really. So that's it. So basically this is saying if this label is on a document, Copilot can't access it. Copilot can't summarize it. And so imagine if you have an entire SharePoint site you do not want Copilot to access, you can prevent it by just applying this label to it. So I'm going to create this policy, and then we're going to go out and look at that policy inside of our DLP environment. We'll see it show up here that it's been a completed configuration. And so we'll take a look at that. Okay, and that is done. We can look at policy details, and then we can go in and edit the policy in the solution. It's going to take us out to DLP policy. And we'll see that one show up. And we'll check on the status of our other one, and then we'll, if it's still in sync, we'll come back in a little bit and test. So here again, we can create this policy and say, Copilot block. Okay, so we'll just, give it a DLP name, that makes sense, and description and so forth. And so no admin units. Then we're going to go here, and again, we have this restriction, and then we're going to say, okay, conditions. If it contains this label, restrict accessing the knowledge source. Okay. And we're going to go next, and we can do all kinds of alerts. And I'm going to turn the policy on immediately. And we're going to submit, and then we'll see if this one is just going to be syncing for us as well. It very well may be, because then what we're going to do is we're going to pull a document up. I'm going to go in, I'm going to do some Copilot stuff, basic summarizations and all of that. And then we're going to apply that label. And then it should be game over for Copilot. So here we have both of these syncing in progress. So I'm going to refresh this for a second, see if we have either one. We do not. So what I'm going to do is I am going to pause the video. We'll come back and see if our policies go into effect. So the two things that we should have been able to deploy directly from DSPM is, number one, in our scenario, we do not want users to be able to type in and ask Copilot any questions related to a social security number or a credit card number. If those are in the prompt, Copilot should not return any response. That's what we expect. Then we have a document, any document or any SharePoint site. If that Copilot block label is on the document, is applied to the document, then Copilot will not process that. It won't summarize it. It won't do any processing against that document or an entire SharePoint site. That's our expectation, but we're going to pause now and come back when this is completed its sync. So we'll catch you on the other side. All right, we are still showing that these are in sync, but I do think after a while, even though they're still sync in progress, but even though that there is a sync still happening, enough of the policy has been distributed to 365 environment that I think what we're trying to do will actually work. In order to test this, I'm going to jump out to another persona here. So I'm going to jump out to Liam. And so we're going to take a look at Liam here. And he's got a couple things going on. First of all, he's got this Litware financial checklist here. And we can see that it's got some well, it doesn't necessarily, honestly, looking at this, doesn't really even have sensitive information in it. However, we see that the label applied is a black label, this Copilot block. And remember, we created created two policies. Number one, we created a policy that says basically if that label is present, the label that we chose, which was the black label of Copilot block, that Copilot was pretty much off limits. It could not touch that file. You couldn't summarize it in anything. We can look at that here. We don't have an auto summary of this file. If I were to click summarize, we're going to see the organization doesn't allow access to Copilot in this document. Okay, we cannot regenerate a summary there. If I were to go into Copilot and say, summarize, let's see if we can find that file. There we go. See if we can get this. And I'm going to, so inside Copilot, let's see what we get here. I found the documents, but I'm unable to access its contents. And then it kind of went away and basically said, none of the files or resources you requested are available due to your organization's policy. Learn about access restrictions. We click in here. It's going to take it out here to data loss prevention to prevent interactions with Copilot, 365 Copilot, Copilot Chat. And so that's basically what we've done. So that file has that label on it. Let's remove the label. Let's go back and let's take this label here and let's downgrade it. Let's just say it's public. It's fine. And we're going to say we're no longer going to use that label. That's fine. So now we have this label, this green label, which means Copilot should be able to generate some interactions from this file now because there's nothing preventing that. So let's regenerate. Now, sometimes what we find that we have to do is we'll go in and we'll close this file, and I will go back and reopen this file, and let's see if that fixes the problem here. So we should get an auto summary now. It's generating the summary, and there we go. So we have an auto summary. Okay, so let's go into Copilot now, and let's redo this. Let's go back here. Let's edit this, and I want to summarize this. And now Copilot should be able to do that. And there we go. So now we've got the summary there. So that's how we can prevent Copilot from accessing anything with a particular label. Nothing special about the label, as we saw. It's just a label that is saying that it is this is a tag, really. And so anywhere that shows up, we use a DSPM policy that's using DLP policy that essentially says no Copilot there. Now, the other thing that we did is we said, okay, I'm going to refresh this chat. And by the way, notice that this is a Copilot block. So if there is a label on that, it will transfer into the conversation here. So, but just a little FYI. Now, what we're going to do now on that is I want to take another file and I want to, so there's this file here I'm going to open it. It's just a random file, but it does have some social security numbers and credit card number at the bottom of the file. But otherwise, it's just nothing file. But notice there is no there's no label on it. There's nothing. Okay, it's got this label here because there's an auto label apply. But what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to just turn public label on. It doesn't matter because we're not using the labeling part of this. I've created another policy that basically says if there is reference of a social security number or credit card number, then Copilot is not allowed to retrieve that information. Notice that it does have a summary. We get the summary because we're allowing that. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in. I don't need to open that. I don't think. I'm going to go in here and I'm going to say, um, I'm going to say, get users social security numbers from my files. And I'm going to just let this do that. And I'm going to see if it pulls that file. I'm going to play around a little bit. I can't retrieve, disclose, or compile social security numbers or other highly sensitive information from files, blah, blah, blah. For example, find files. Okay, list documents. Okay, summarize employee records without social security numbers. I'm gonna try this and see. Now, it may not have taken the time to scan it enough. That policy is still churning there, but I'm gonna see. I'm gonna call out this file and see if it'll see if I can pull that file out. There's a couple other ones here. I do not see that, so we're gonna go ahead and grab the file that we were just looking at here. If it will, I'm gonna go from file. And it's just demo social security number text. What I want to do is I want to see if it will pull the social security numbers from the file. I'm calling it out specifically now. Now I asked for files, and it says that I can't do that. But I want to challenge this a little bit. So let's see if it does extract them. It may, because I'm not sure. All right. So yeah, I can't disclose social security numbers from demo social security numbers. The file contains social security info, formatted, positive, or sensitive personal information, so I can't only handle them in a redacted or compliant same form. Okay, so basically, it is not allowing me to extract those files because of our policy that we have that basically says if a file has or really any conversation that has social security numbers or credit card numbers, then Copilot's interaction, its responses, including agents, would be off limits. A lot there. So that was a bit that we covered there with DSPM policies. That basically, when you do a DSPM policy, pretty much a lot of those recommendations, those actions are going to generate policies inside a DLP. Very quick to create and easy to get going on those. And so these are still in so one of those did sync. So the Copilot block, interestingly, is not finished syncing yet, but that one is continuing to go. So anyway, so that is a bit about the DSPM, the Unified DSPM that Microsoft is moving to, and just how it can help you get control over the data that is in your environment. What's sensitive? Where does it live? Who has access to it? Is it overshared, over-permissioned? That is DSPM. And I hope this has been helpful for you. Thanks for watching.